bad trade paperback flocking to the
I am joined by the amazing Allison O'Toole, Dan Price, Andre Owen, Fred Kennedy, Chip Zdarsky. Chip, thanks for coming. What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, and you are joining us once again for My Sketchy Goodness with Keith Grachow. Keith, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. Just making sure everybody knows we're live on Wednesday night reviews. Let me just get to, there we go. Okay, I'm good.
Love it. And to those out there listening now with us live, thank you for tuning in. If you're watching sometime in the future, hope you enjoy the episode. Hope it went well. If anyone wants to support either this show, Keith in general, get Keith's awesome books, click the links down below. They will take you to various awesome websites where you can get awesome comics. So Keith, we haven't done this show for like a month because I was sick. Stuff has been going on. We've got a lot to talk about. So as I understand it, you have some stuff that you want to show for the live art portion. Why don't we start from there and then jump off to what you've been up to in the last week or so?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess the big thing to chat about is that I was just at Fan Expo for 4 days. And am I sharing? Can you see it? There we go.
Yes, we can.
Delayed. Okay. So I was at Fan Expo for the last 4 days, and it was fantastic. One of the best shows ever, for sure. Like, I was pretty much nonstop from like Friday to Sunday. Thursday was my day to like do a bit of shopping, to say hi to people. It's usually a little slower on Thursdays, although it was busy. I mean, I did do pretty well Thursday as well. Friday was just like I did a panel on self-publishing in the morning, which went spectacularly. We had lots of questions, and then we didn't even have enough time to answer most of them. So I think the majority of people came to my table. I'm not sure about the others in the panel, but they came to my table and continued questions, which was great. And then after that, it was just like, I mean, throughout the day, it was just like nonstop. I remember just looking at my watch going, oh my, it's like the show's ending in 30 minutes. Like I didn't even, it was just like that. Saturday, similar. And then Sunday, it was Sunday. I was able to, I was done. I was like, I hit a wall sometime like within the first 2 or 3 hours. So people were asking me questions and I was just like indulging them. And, so I had people at my table for like 30 or 40 minutes, which is, normally I don't mind people asking some questions, but also I'm there to sell. But Sunday I was like, nope, ask questions. I'm done. I don't have the capacity to do too many more sales. So it was a really, really great show. As normal, as usual, volunteers were fantastic. Shout outs to Eric and Jen and Christian and everybody else who came by to help out. Of course, Kevin Boyd, who organizes the guest artist area. He's going in for a knee surgery today, so wishing him well on that. And then, just my neighbors were fantastic. I met Jen St. Ong for the first time, and then Yana, I don't know her last name. I was Cosmic Art. Was on the other side of me. And then Francine Delgado was on the other side of her. And then Stephanie Cook was on the other side of Jen. So it was a really nice group of people that I was able to converse with all weekend. I felt really, really lucky to be in that position, to be able to be there to answer people's questions about self-publishing, to be able to show people some of the new things that I've been working on. So issue number 5 of Saltwater is hot off the press, and I'll be doing a tour of that. We can talk about some of the places I'll be for that in a couple of minutes. Yes, and then please. Also The City We Chose from Teo Comics Press is hot off the press as well. and it looks fantastic. Just real quick little, you know. And I know they're going to be playing, having some events in regards to that coming up in September, I think. So I don't have any news specifically on when that's going to come out, but I'll be in touch with Andrew Stevenson. I'm sure he'll spread the word. So yeah, and then what you're looking at here. So I have been doing So I just brought down the layer there and put it under an adjustment layer to give it that orange tinge, just so anybody wants to know what that was. It's now an underdrawing, and I'm just gonna. So this was my like rough of the Wolfman, and then I'm going in with a little bit. I'm probably just going to still kind of roughly draw this in a bit, but and then after that I'm going to print it out and ink it traditionally. And the reason why I'm doing that is because next, starting on the 6th, I believe, September 6th, I'll be in Portland, Oregon. And there's or 5th or 6th, Thursday of next week, I'm going to be in Portland, Oregon. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday is going to be Rose City Comic Con. And they love Universal Monster stuff out there. I've been selling prints of that stuff for years. And I've decided to do some original stuff. And I think you've seen some of it, Konrad. I thought you had, maybe. I've had it at my table a couple of times.
Okay, because I do have the, I want to say it's Man Thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're, especially for your style and the way that you like to illustrate, Universal Monsters, fantastic fit.
Yeah, and I've been doing like some sequential pages as if they were imagined Universal Monsters. I think I can bring something up here that I've done. There we go.
Just don't get yourself in trouble either.
Yeah, here I'm going to take this off for a moment, and then there we go. Yeah, let me just. It's not a big deal. It's not like I have anything, but yeah. I don't necessarily want to be sharing my some of that stuff, my filing.
Yeah, I was gonna say don't need to unintentionally share something that's under NDA or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So I've been doing. There we go. So yeah, I've been doing these traditionally hand-drawn sequential pages as if like the Universal Monsters, they had comic books, which they do, but these are my imagined pages. And I'll take things from stills from the 30s, 40s, 50s movies. I make some of it up. The fun part about this is because they're like initially they're blue lined, which means it's similar to what I'm doing here in that orange or blue, whatever. And then I'll print it out and I'll ink and do markers on top of it. And then I sell them at shows. I have traditional pages now to be able to sell. And, I don't sell a huge amount, but selling a couple here or there is great. And I find that Rose Cities, they seem to really love monsters. Like I sell more of those there than I do other shows. So I figure this year I just had sequential pages. I had Wolfman, I had Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, Creature. No, actually I didn't have Frankenstein's monster last Rose City. I had Nosferatu, Dracula, Wolfman, and Creature. And then I did Frankenstein's monster sometime late last year or early this year, and then I've done a Bride of Frankenstein as well. And then I've decided to start doing pinups, right? So just a different price point, but it means that somebody that wants to have like a monster, Universal Monster, from me, they can get something, like if they're Wolfman. And the beauty of this is that because I digitally illustrated initially, just let's call these pencils, I can print it out again and do like a, I don't know, limited amount of like these originals. Now, I'm not telling people these are one-offs. I don't tell people this is the only one that exists, although technically they're going to be different every time I do them, right?
Exactly,
so they're not going to be the same exact thing. But either way, I'm doing, like if I want to keep on doing the same one over, it doesn't like bore me to keep on doing it, then I will, keep on printing these out. And I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to number them. So somebody who gets, let's say it's the second one I've done, they'll have a number 2 next to it. So they'll know that I've done one other Frankenstein's monster already that somebody else owns somewhere in the world. Anyway, yes, this is my newest thing. I figure since I this is something I can show, because it's, it's just, it's nothing that I'm working on for anybody else, right? Except for myself. So,
well, what I find interesting and cool about the way that you're approaching this, you sort of with the man thing that is, I think it's obscured by light, but the man thing that's up on my wall, there's a little blurb, and in it you wrote "Thank you, Konrad." But that was the thing you'd sort of talked about earlier on a previous episode, where it was allowing you to personalize. So if someone liked Man Thing and it was like, say, their birthday, you could then write "Happy Birthday, Brandon," or whoever, right?
Yeah.
That person could buy it or for themselves or as a gift or whatever. And then like with you doing this, I find this interesting because I remember, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago now, the idea came up, and I'd heard comic artists talking about when they had made the flip from print media, or not print media, sorry, classic, I guess, or analog drawing, if you will, so actually drawing on like an 11 by 17 page, to digital. They liked it for the process often because they could do things faster. They could Control Z and erase mistakes. They could, do all the things that Photoshop lets you do, or whatever program, Procreate, or heck, if you're crazy enough, MS Draw, I guess, would let you do, to be more efficient and sort of kind. But then the concern had come up where they were like, yeah, but the thing about going print or going digital is I no longer have something to sell. I can't sell pages of a book that I've made. I can't sell this or that. And then I'm not like a big poster guy myself, but I've always seen comic artists have like, oh, I made this really sick cover, let's just make a bunch of posters of it. I've had other things where comic creators have given me posters of certain pages that I've loved. So what I find what you're doing is a really interesting sort of split down the middle, where you're like, this is a thing where I can very easily print off a bunch of these and it will look good, it'll travel very well, but still allow you to have that flexibility in them. Like, what makes you want to go with that? Like, what? Because it's brilliant, but like, how'd that come up?
Well, I mean, it is kind of the part of the reason why, as a digital artist, I don't have any kind of, originally drawn product on my table. And so artists who do have that, always kind of envied a bit, because it's like they've got this beautiful line work, that they hand drawn, that was hand drawn on their table. And, there's something very appealing to collect for people, right? They want to be able to have something that, I guess ideally is a one-off, or it's something that's one of a few. And so I wanted to do that kind of thing for years. And so, an artist could, if they wanted to, print out something that they've digitally illustrated, but just do the line work, and then do something similar to what I'm doing. And of course, it's not going to be the same thing as what was in the comic book, because it'll be maybe rendered differently. And so they could do that, but then also you're running the risk that you're doing something twice, right? So you kind of have to hope that it's something you think somebody would definitely buy. So you are kind of running that risk that you're, maybe you just take, like, let's say a really cool sequential page from a comic you're working on, you think, people are going to want, and then just render it traditionally and then sell it for, the whatever your page rate is plus, right? Because you can say, oh, this is a one-off, doesn't exist. So you could do that. It's just a matter of having the time to do it for some of these artists. But for this, one of the reasons why I thought it'd be cool to do something like the Universal Monsters is because people always ask when I did these pinups, these Universal Monster pinups I did years ago that I've stopped doing. They were always like, oh, is this original? Like, did this come from something? And I'm like, no, this is just like, I just did this on my own for myself. And then, people seem to like it. But one of the things that, I think some of those people were like, oh man, if you had the original page or original, I'd buy that. So I was like, oh, okay. And so that's kind of like that seed had been planted years ago. And then when I decided, for Rose City, I wanted to have something new because I wasn't going to do another monster print. So I figured, well, maybe original art would actually be something people would want. And I already had like a built-in audience there. They were looking for the next thing I've done. And lo and behold, those people ended up buying, right, like my page. So I was like, oh, well, that worked, right? That just made it worth it for me to do. And so that's, I've sold a couple here and some of the other shows I've done. So it's not something that, it's not like every show I sell something like this, but I kind of feel like I like doing them. It's a great way for me. I'll take like a day or two before I get ready for a show to warm up, get myself ready for some traditional drawing that I might be doing at shows. So that way I'm warmed up. It's something I now know that I can sell for sure, that people will buy. So it is worth me doing. And then, because I don't do this every show. I don't take the time to create every show, but it is one of those things where they seem to slowly be accumulating a bit. So, because I also when I sell them, I'll redraw it. I'm accumulating enough of some little portfolio of original pieces that it seems to. I think seeing these original pieces on my table, people are like, oh, well, maybe I want to commission you for something, which, because I don't have anything on my table other than comics a lot of the times, people don't always associate me with doing commissions. So I figure this is a good way for me to get it in mind. They're in their mind to go, oh, he does commissions. So, and that. I mean, I did a bunch in Fan Expo, and I normally don't have as many as I did this last Fan Expo. So, which was really cool. Yeah, it was a really that was a lot of fun. And I'm not always. I should give the caveat with doing commissions at shows. Most people like to give me the sketch covers, and I don't like doing sketch covers at shows because, number one, whatever material a lot of the sketch covers don't always take like every medium. And so I find that like the best way for you to get the best work out of me with those sketch covers, let me take it home. So, and then it's usually, we arrange to meet somewhere or I see you at another show or something. So you're getting a bit better work out of me. You're also, I have more supplies at home, and I can actually go, okay, this isn't really working, but I have something else that might. And therefore it's I get to experiment a little bit more. And therefore you can see if you go to my Instagram, you can see on my latest post, I shared some of the commissions I did. and one of them was one of the sketch covers I had done for one of my friends, Paul Kemp, as a matter of fact, who's always on our stream. He and I had this fun little thing where he'll he'll commission me for something on a sketch cover. I take it home, I work on it. Then the next time I see him, I present it to him, and then he commissions me for another one. So it's like he's constantly, we're on this like a tour of commissions. So the creature one I did for him was and so for example with that one, the I used, when I laid color into it, it absorbed into the paper to the point where it darkened things too much. But because I had all my materials at home, I was able to like bring it back and lighten it quite a bit with other like, with like, I think I used some pastel like pencils and stuff like that, right? Which I don't bring all that stuff to a show. It's just too much stuff to bring.
Oh
so
yeah, that'd be a treasure chest worth.
Yeah, but you can see here with those other commissions I did, those are just on regular pieces of paper, and those are much easier for me to be able to do for people because, I have the ability to do, color on most of those with like a marker or color pencil or something like that. And I know what's going to happen. I'm not concerned with the paper doing something, bleeding or not taking the ink or whatever it is that happens with some of these types of like sketch covers. So if you want to commission me for like something regular at a show, that's fine. But if you bring a sketch cover, there's a good chance I'm going to want to take it home with me. And you get something a little bit more experimental, I guess, just because of the nature of the medium, right?
I guess I never realized. Yeah, like I never realized that, and like, bonehead move not to think about it, but as someone who doesn't do a lot of art, I don't think about the fact that like a regular comic book page or the cover anyway, they're often like a glossy, sort of thicker material. They're not as clearly as porous, and some of them, like I've seen them be very glossy. So like watercolor I would think anyway, it would want to reject. Now that I'm thinking about it, or sort of more watery inks too. That's fascinating. Like I never thought about it.
Yeah.
All right, Keith.
So, well, yeah, I mean, and there's some that are just, they won't even take pencil marks. Like I can't even draw an undersketch so like one of them I did for somebody for one of my friends. I did do one at the show because I don't think I wouldn't know how to get in touch with them otherwise. And so it just, it was, again, it's the reason why I like taking them home. And it just didn't take. And so I felt really bad. So I ended up drawing what he wanted on a regular. I did what he wanted on the sketch cover, but it just came out really badly. Nothing, like it just didn't take anything. So it was very limited in what I can do. Again, it's one of the reasons why I take home sketch covers if I can. This was a situation which I wasn't able to do it. So I was like, well, I'll try this, but if I can't do it, I'm going to do something different. And anyway. They're just, some of them are just not very good. And that's really what it comes down to. I'm sure some artists have figured out, like, they may have workarounds. And if they do enough sketch covers, they may have like, acrylic paints they can lay on top of it and then draw on top of that. I'm not like set up that way. So, but
yeah,
yes.
like my brain would almost go to like having on hand, what is it? Almost like gesso or something that you could coat it with to give yourself a work surface.
Right, but here's the thing: even gesso, it would have to be thick enough because that gesso would waffle it, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
you need to. So again, there's like, you have to make sure that whatever you're laying on top of these, like, they are Bristol, but there's still, they can only take so much. Well, number one, whatever you coat on top of it, it's just gonna, you need time to get it to dry. It may waffle it, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of, I think I'm sure there's somebody out there that has a better solution. I think like acrylics would work really well, but here's the thing: even to put in an underdrawing, you would almost, if pencil isn't going to lay in there, you'd have to be comfortable just like I took like a ballpoint pen and did a really light underdrawing that way, but that's kind of permanent, unfortunately. So I had to make sure that it's anyway. Long story short, be aware of the type of cover you're bringing. The ones that work best are like the ones that are like almost like a watercolor paper. They have a bit of like tooth to them. They're not the super glossy ones. The ones that can actually absorb mediums like inks and watercolor and whatever. The ones that are like highly glossy, you can't do too much with it.
Yeah, and like I think the worst part, now that I think about it, I'm like, the people pumping out the most of those covers usually are Marvel and DC, and like they're the people who should know that, right? Like so many people on their boards of directors and things like that are literally comic creators who've been doing it for how long? It's like, why aren't you putting out sketch covers where it's like a dense cover that is watercolor or whatever, like the material for it? Weird.
Yeah, I mean I think Marvel and
anyway.
DC are doing that now, but some of the other companies aren't. They're just, I don't know. Maybe it's cost. Maybe they just figure, it's cheaper for them to do it with that shiny than it is to get like an actual like a raw or matte type of cover. But who knows? I have no idea. I don't know what their thought is. So
interesting. Well, so one of the things, Keith, I did want to ask that sort of came up to my, while I was thinking about what we might talk about today, while I'm absolutely watching you make this amazing piece of art here. I imagine a lot of people who get into doing comics, obviously being very creative people and artistically inclined, it's probably not their only thing, right? They probably don't exclusively sit down and go, I'm going to do comics and that's all I'm going to do. And I'm sure there are people out there, but most of them I doubt, right? Especially if out of necessity of getting paid and being able to pay bills and all that stuff. So the question I wanted to ask you, Keith, was basically, as someone who does comics and also, what would I call what you do? I'd say graphic design, marketing, advertising design, all that kind of stuff. What are some of the artistic challenges you've come up against that are maybe even just specific to you, but in how did you work around them?
So I'm sorry, what do you mean, like doing other things besides being a graphic artist?
Like, no, like when it comes to how you do art, how you approach art, because you do comics as well as your packaging design, graphic design, stuff like that. What are some of the artistic challenges that you've been up against in the industry, and how have you gotten through them, around them, basically been able to keep doing what you're doing?
Let me see if I can. So, like, how do I keep on being able to create comics? How do I keep on getting paid? How do I get jobs, or people find me to do this stuff? Or
that's not quite, no. Like purely from an art perspective, what are some of like the creative challenges that you've had?
Creative challenges.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just like coming up with like new ideas for covers and like keep myself fresh, that kind of thing. Or I mean that the creative challenges that's a whole wide range of possible, that could be anywhere from like a client who is like, this isn't exactly what I'm looking for, and you're going, how do I problem solve this, to coming up with a cover that's something you haven't done before, that's going to pull people in, to a new process of in your workflow that you're not sure is going to work or not. Like there's all different
Yeah.
aspects to that question. Sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just certain things that
No.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting as specific to the type of question that you're trying to figure out. Like, can you give me an example of like what you think might be something? Oh, you froze on me.
Oh, I've got Keith back. Can you hear me, Keith?
Yep, you froze on me for a second there.
There we go. Same. Yeah, I suppose I gotta get more specific. I don't. It's a question. I know what I'm after. I just don't know how to get the words together for you. Like, because you do comic art, and comic art is a very specific thing. It's sequential art. You're telling a story. The language you use, how you compose, is specific to comics and getting that story across, or those chain of events. And then the information you would try to convey in, say, design on a packaging for a toy, or in your other sort of professional work that isn't comics related, what are some of the challenges that you've come up against because of the differences in the art forms? I guess is kind of what I want to know about.
Challenges. Well, I mean, not there are similarities between, like, designing, let's say, a cover and designing packaging, right? You're dealing with composition, you're dealing with color, and you have to have an attention to detail for things like that. But there are different types of, like, for example, with package design, when I was working for a toy company, you had to also think along the lines of like size of it, because it was going to fit in a certain amount of space in a Walmart. You had to make sure that they had space for it, right? So you didn't have like, while you have, so for example, with comic books, I guess there's similarity in that way too, which is a comic book shop can't like put, if you were to do like a magazine size, like something, like something this big that you're going to design, right? They have to have room for it. They have to make sure that they can put it on their rack. And if it's taking up too much space, it may only last about a week, and then they shift it off somewhere to never be seen again, right? So you do have to make sure when you're designing something that you have in mind where it's going to be sold. And so there is that similarity. I guess there is a similarity in that regards with packaging too, right? You can't do something so complicated that the shape of it is going to be hard to fit in with other shapes around it, because boxes work for a reason. You can fit them nicely, whereas if you have something that's oddly shaped, you have to make sure you have a way to place it among other things that may not be oddly shaped, right? Your puzzle, right? So those are the types of things you would think about when you're designing a toy, what the package is going to look like, but also, I mean, a comic too, because let's see. So you do have like your standard size comic book, but then the city we chose is smaller, right? It's a smaller size.
Yep.
So you have to compensate for lettering when you're doing this, right? You have to compensate for the art because you don't have as much space to work as you do with this. But at the same time, this is like there's like a lot of manga that is this size, if not even smaller. And so there's a familiarity with younger people with the size of like a graphic novel like this that they may gravitate towards versus something that's this size, which may not be as familiar to them, right? So there are things like that. And sometimes like I've done things where I've made it comic book size and then shrunk it down to something that like the city we chose size on purpose, because I could always use it later as a comic book size again, right? So there are ways around that. You can have something dual purpose, but you just have to be aware of like what, when somebody's reading it, are they going to be able to see it clearly at both sizes, right? So those are
Yeah.
things to problem solve if you have some foresight, if you're familiar enough with like the way that comics print and stuff like that, so like how it's going to read, how much size, how much space you have, where it's gonna like where they trim the book, so that you're not cropping something that
Yeah.
you shouldn't be cropping. So did that kind of answer your question?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Yes and no. So it wasn't exactly what I was after, but it was fascinating anyway. Because very much so, like you're saying, be conscious and aware of where your thing is going to be, whatever you're designing or making. And for me, where that's been coming up is because on weekends I work at Nowhere Comics downtown.
Right.
Um, when I'm so in the shop, for anyone out there, if you go, um, in the shop we have a whole bunch of back issues and like the comics from 2, 3, and 4 weeks ago, and they're all in these wonderfully organized little bins. It's like all wooden stuff, but those units, they're built to allow a floppy with a little bit of wiggle room so they don't get damaged, which is great. Um, but it's fascinating that you mentioned know what your product, how it's going to fit, because there have been a number of comics. Obviously, anything in that large format magazine size will not fit. Um,
Yeah.
but even the stuff, some Ninja Turtle stuff has come out. I think The Last Mermaid was a book that came out, and it's not quite that full magazine size, but it's not exactly a comic size. So it's been a whole thing that in the store we've talked about, like, okay, cool. Do we want to make a display so we can show these things off? Because there's just been so much of a larger format recently. Um, so it's interesting, like when it comes to like thinking about design, especially in a creative field where someone might be inclined to just do whatever they want. But at the end of the day, when the thing gets printed, it has to fit and make sense and look good in that, however you're choosing to print it.
Yeah. I mean, and then another thing too, and this is, we did this on purpose, but it's also not on purpose. We didn't have enough foresight. So like when you have, the reason why you have titles up here is because when you have it, if there's another floppy covering on top, right, it's easier to see the title. So like you have to be aware of like like we did this on purpose. We knew that. Yeah, we knew that, exactly. So we knew that this like we're doing something different here, and we had to be aware of this, but at the same time we know that it also makes it a bit harder as a sale for a shop as well as a publisher maybe wanting to pick it up. They may go, well, you may want to start designing stuff up here, right? So it was an experiment.
Yeah.
I'd say I still like it, but and I see the way people lay out covers, even like things that nobody's ever read before. Yeah, like they'll put it in different spots. So it's not exactly like you can't do it. And even if you're a no name or somebody that's starting something new, like it's not like you can't do that. But you just have to be aware that when you do something like that, um, you are going to be hindering
Mm-hmm.
potentially, especially if for whatever reason the way the comic shop lays it out, they cover parts of it up, and you're going, well, great. Now people have no idea what the name of the title is. You have to hope the cover is enough to grab them, right? And so,
Yeah.
again, those are some of the things you have to take into consideration is when it comes to like figuring out a comic book cover, the size of a comic book, how thick it is, all that
Mm.
stuff. There's all considerations. You almost have to plan all this before you even create it, so that you have, so what's going to happen when you put it out there into
Yeah.
the world, right?
Huh. that actually makes me wonder if, given how comics used to be sold right on spinner racks and stuff, um, not bagged, not boarded, just straight on a spinner rack or on some sort of display. If that's why, do I have any comics on here that actually have one? Kind of. If so, old school comics. This is not one of them, but in an older
Right.
comic, right, you'd have the I don't know the name for it, but you'd have like an image of a character. I know Marvel, for whatever reason, had Spider-Man on a lot of their comics. Not Spider-Man
Right.
comics, but all of them. And then they would have like Marvel, the issue, the date, blah blah blah. I wonder if that is because even if there was like 10,000 comics on display and they were all like this, you could go, "Oh, that's Spider-Man. That's Marvel. I gotta get that." Um, just as like really smart design. Again, just a theory. I have no clue. You could probably speak to it better than I could, but
I
yeah,
can't
it just makes
remember.
me think.
Yeah, I can't remember what that is called, but there are. So there was at one point it was just newsstand, right? You just had comics in the newsstand, and then the direct market came about.
Yeah.
I think what early '70s or something like that, late '60s, early '70s. So you
Mm.
have shops specifically selling comic books, and so that I think would be the difference in how right how they're distributed, how they're sold, and that's where that I think that mark comes into play because if you notice,
Yeah.
there's some comics. If you've ever picked up like an older comic book, they may be different. It may be the same. You may find the same issue, but it may be like different in how it's like if there's the like the barcode to sell it, right? You may have that in a
Yep.
place where it's not on another like a
Yeah. The
direct market,
newsstand versus.
right? Yeah. So there
Yeah.
is a difference in regards to, and then they would have like on top, they would often have like the a little, um, like I think they changed that up too, where they would have like the little strip on top that said something about it, right? Um, so again, there's yeah, they've changed it. It's out of necessity of like whatever however they're selling uh, the book, the market. I don't have the historical.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody out there knows better than I do in regards to like the actual history behind that kind of stuff is to. But yeah, I know what you mean. I'm rereading New Mutants right now, and you have Bill Sienkiewicz who he would he's first of all he like just completely opened up like the way storytelling was told in those comics, but then he put in some really interesting little illustrations in those like whatever you want to call them. I don't know, does anybody out there know what they're called? um, and so yeah, that was. And then the other thing I liked about them was that if you were a uh, collectors, like I'm curious to know how you feel about it, but collectors like to collect team members. So for example, like you have like the X-Men, you'd see all the different team members on the issue that they're going to be in, and then the next issue one of them would be gone and a new one would be in their place. You'd be like, ooh, like they're introducing. Well, I think you would already have known that they're introducing that character because you've seen them previous, but now they're officially a member because they're put on the cover that way, right? So you're like, yes, now we know that they're this character they introduced and has kind of been part of the team, but hasn't really officially been joined. Well, now they're officially in the cover in that little rectangle there, and so you're like, oh, cool. Now we know this is going to be a character that we're going to see. Uh, from issue to issue, right? So I always like that. I always like
Yeah.
seeing that kind of thing.
Actually, no.
Yeah.
Just to
So
confirm, so I've brought it up here. This is the yeah. Um, I mean, I think for me, I think that's really cool for a number of reasons. One, if you are really particularly interested in that character, and that is letting you know, hey, this person is in this book. Um, one, it's just an easy way to communicate with your reader that, hey, if you like so and so, pick up this issue, even if you haven't read it before or you don't know what's going on in the main series or whatever, right? Um, you can find them here. I like that. I think that's cool. It's also like an interesting way to be able to, like, thinking about it from a, I guess, collector's perspective, or maybe it's a historian's perspective. Um, be able to actively track how the team has changed over time.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of cool because it's a really nice, tidy representation of it, and stuff like that. That like scratches my brain in the right way.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
I
a
think it's interesting.
collector. Yeah. For a collector mentality, it's a way of collecting the characters that are going to be in the episode or the issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did we find out what the name of that thing is? I can't remember. I'm sure I've heard it before. It's just not.
Oh, hold on. I'm gonna type. I'm gonna turn off my microphone because no one wants to hear that much clicking.
But for those out there, I think you could actually even do like leave that blank in there and do a remark, right? That could be a great way for you. I'm sure somebody's done that already, where you take that rectangle and
Genius.
yeah, make it just leave it blank. So leave the cover, as is, but then leave that little corner blank and make it a remark, of the character or something. So, again, anybody out there, I'm sure, has seen something like that. I'm probably not coming up with anything original, but it's still kind of a cool place for you to be able to put a original piece of art, especially if you're using that, if you have it, because I do use that for like our Kikamika comics. That's where we put right here we go. That's where we put our logo right here. But I guess you could conceivably, if you wanted to change your logo, and put it underneath it, and then leave that area blank, right?
Yeah.
And then do a remark there or something.
So the name I was able to find online is called a corner box,
Corner
which
box.
it sounds so unsophisticated. Like I thought it would be like, oh, it's a remark or something, but corner box, cool.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's genius. Like if that was just a blank square, and then even if you did like, oh, this is the Fan Expo Canada edition of these covers, and you did like a limited print with that blank, and then someone could pay, I don't know, $25 to get a quick bust shot or something like that. Um, that's just a cool kind of idea. Damn.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have to think about it. Maybe we'll see that on a future episode of Saltwater, right?
Yeah.
So like we have done blank covers before, but maybe doing something like that would be a little bit more, like it may be a way for us to do something very quickly at the table versus like and maybe not even, you could always just, hey, do you want the $10 or the or $15 versus the $7, whatever we're selling it for.
Yeah, exactly. I dig it. I think that's something that could do very well, especially at a show or for signings or something. Um, yeah, interesting. So, Keith, we've got like 10 minutes left. We're breezing through another episode of this. Um, you mentioned Fan Expo this year was the best Fan Expo that you've been at. Um, Sales were good. You went to the panels and everything. But there seemed to be sort of an emphasis on just like the interactions you had with people. Were there any that stood out, or was it just sort of like a general vibe of how people were interacting with you?
Oh, I had, I mean, no, there was a lot that stood out for sure. I mean, I had somebody who had, that they had visited me in March. So you may have even been there because you were at my table. And they were talking about having their portfolio, and maybe next time they saw me, they would show it to me. And so they came back and they showed me, what they'd been working on. And, that was the Sunday, so it actually worked out well for me to be able to give that person a really nice long
Oh,
critique. And I don't necessarily always do that, but I was able to take the time to do that for this person. And that was really very gratifying because it seemed like they obviously were it meant a lot to them that I was able to take the time, and they were able to like take some notes and learn from what they could, and the things that was working. It's gratified that they know that they're doing something right, and at least from my perspective, and yeah, so I had some of that kind of stuff. I had there's another person that was showing their stuff, and they're again they had some great work, and they're really open book sponge, taking it all in. So it's really nice to be able to see people that are
awesome.
working and creating their own stories. And so I had a bunch of that kind of thing, where either people that were in various stages, or they were just starting, and they needed some of that direction, or they've already created their own book, but it was good to hear somebody kind of reaffirm some of the things, or they got some ideas they hadn't heard before. So the
Yeah.
self-publishing panel was very gratifying. And then just I had some people I hadn't seen in a while because the pandemic had been a few years, so I was able to catch up with some people, and you know that's always really nice to make sure that to make sure that they're still okay, and that hopefully you'll see them again, right? Yeah, there's a lot of so I
I
had
dig
a
it.
lot of
That's
that kind
cool.
of stuff. Yeah, it was nice. It was very you know really good. As I think I've said before, and the reason why we're doing this podcast is, and I did talk about this podcast. I talked about it because people were like, "Well, what if I want to connect with you and ask more questions?" And I said, "Well, I appreciate you want to, but you the amount of people that ask me that question would mean that I would be spending hours of my day answering questions and then answering more questions, and I don't do that. Like I don't want to necessarily charge. I mean, I could charge if I wanted to, but that's if you want to do like a workshop or something where you get much more
Yeah.
specific, or I tutor you or something. But generally, giving out some of this information, it's valuable, but it's also just it's not like it takes 10 or 15 minutes, but that 10 or 15 minute adds up, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah. Especially over
um,
100 questions.
yeah, so I just say, come listen to our podcast. Ask those questions. See if I can if I can answer them while I'm here in front of you. And then, of course, if there's more questions people have, you could always I do offer consulting. So that's something that somebody can get. I just don't want to yeah, like I'm trying to encourage people to create and keep on creating. So this is one way I can do that. If you come watch me draw, and then you can ask a question or two, and then we'll if there's follow up questions, you can always just you know see me somewhere else, or consulting or whatever. Right?
100%. And I mean, you know what? I appreciate that approach to it too, because for for the person who came up to you at the previous show in March Comic Con and had said, "Hey, can I bring my portfolio?" and you're like, "Yeah, if I have the time, no problem." And then they did. That is fantastic. And like you said, to be able to reaffirm, give them a little guidance, let them know what was working and wasn't, like that's huge. And I am sure that they appreciated that to no end.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't owe anyone your knowledge. You have earned that hard, well earned, and if they want it, you need to get something out of it. Yes, it's great to be as kind as you are, and for that one person review their portfolio. But yeah, it's not like I don't know. People shouldn't expect it. Um, but at the same time, I think it's super cool that you did that.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. You don't want
Also,
to. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
When did you fill all that in? Like I know I could probably watch the stream back in like an hour and a bit when it fully processes, but like I don't know, man. it always amazes me that you can chat as much as you do with me and do that.
Well, as I said before, certain things, if I've laid it out where I need to focus, this is more like now I'm just finding the lines that are already there, and that doesn't take as much. I guess that's lots of practice. I just, at this point, I'm using this as a reference now, and now I'm because it's a reference, I'm just like laying on top of it the lines that I want to use and don't use, and So long story short, now I'm gonna print this out into a blue line without all that, and then I'll ink it up, and then add in some rendering, with markers and stuff. So, but yeah.
Love it.
So there we go.
And people can get copies of it. Yeah, and then people can get copies of it next weekend, or will it be the weekend after?
Yeah, so I think that's the September 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, something like that. It's gonna be in Portland, Oregon. If people want to buy this from me, you can always contact me, and then I'll make sure I have one that I ink up and render up, and then I may do another similar one for the show. But yeah, so you can get it from me. You just have to contact me directly. These are hopefully these are a lot of fun to do, and hopefully I'll keep on doing these, and I've thought about other types of, I may do, like, because these are all properties that other people own, but because they're essentially one-off original pieces of art, I can do them to my heart's content, right? So it's a lot of fun to be able to play around with somebody else's properties in this way.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I don't think we have enough time to get into it this time, but maybe for the next one, we can talk about fan. I don't know if it's fan art, drawing, licensed characters and things like that. Because I'm always curious when I see people who've got booths at Comic-Cons and stuff, where like they're drawing Sailor Moon and characters from Jujutsu Kaisen and Batman, and I'm like, you're selling these prints of art, but it is a licensed character. Like, if they tried to do that with a Disney princess, I'm sure Disney would absolutely hunt them down to no end. But it's something I'm always curious about, and I'm sure you know lots about it, and we can have a very fun talk next time. But yeah, Keith, absolutely. I am so glad you had a good time at Fan Expo. I am certain you'll have a good time at Rose City. And I had a blast tonight chatting with you about art, about the Wolfman, and about cons. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. And again, folks out there, if you'd like to support Keith, the link's down below. Click them. They'll take you to a website where you can support the show. An alternate website will take you to Keith's sort of catalog, and you can go have all the things, do the things, and enjoy Keith's work. We'll see you later, everybody.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Collector problems.